Welcome to Green Biz Studio. I'm Shauna Rappaport, Vice President and Executive Director of Verge with Green Biz Group. And I'm speaking today with Catherine Dolton, who is the Vice President of Global Corporate Responsibility for InterContinental Hotels Group. Welcome, Catherine.
Hi, Shauna. It's great to be here.
So talk a little bit at the high level about the InterContinental Hotels Group and specifically what corporate, social, and environmental responsibility means at IHG. What initiatives are you working on? What's most energizing to you personally right now?
Great question. So, I mean, IHG, I'm sure a lot of people will be familiar with the company through our brands. So we have some 5,900 hotels across 100 countries. 16 brands, so everything from Six Senses right through to Holiday Inn Express. So really, really big footprint today. We've also got 1,900 hotels in our development pipeline, which will be coming into the system over the next few years. So, as I say, a huge footprint. And I think what's really important about us is that we have predominantly a third-party ownership model. So we don't own really any of the hotels, only a handful. We work with third parties who are entrepreneurs who in most cases are actually operating those hotels themselves. So I often reflect from a sustainability perspective that makes things really hard because it's all about influencing those third parties to make the changes. So it's interesting for me in particular because I used to work in investor relations, so selling our story to the finance community, which, you know, the franchise model is amazing, but much harder now in my current role. So as we look at sustainability at IHG, you know, we've got a proud and long history of being a responsible business. And that's really thinking about how we interact with our communities in those 5,900 hotels. So, you know, that's everything from environmental responsibility. So we've got a big focus on reducing our carbon emissions. So we've had an external target for a few years now, but earlier this year, we've actually set a science-based target. So a massive step up in our commitments. It's looking at water, as well as obviously waste, which is a really hot topic for the industry. And on top of that as well, it's how we work with our communities. So how we provide support to those in need, as well as helping disadvantaged people in particular to access skills to enable them to work in an industry such as ours.
There's a whole line of questioning for each one of those sort of categories and initiatives, but I want to hone in a little bit. You mentioned waste, which I can imagine is a huge issue across all of your sites. Talk a little bit about how the circular economy fits into these initiatives, whether it's waste specifically. How is IHG thinking about circularity?
It's a really great question, and it's one that we're thinking long and hard about, because if I'm honest, you know, the hotel industry, it's not great at this. So, you know, we joined the Ellen MacArthur Foundation to try and get some ideas from other industries to bring into ours. So it's a lot of it is around collaboration. How can we work with third parties to really innovate to find some of those circular solutions? So, I mean, one example is we've been working with a company called Trendsetter, who actually have been using recycled plastic bottles to make into duvets and pillows for our Voco brand. So, I mean, that's one example of some fantastic innovation, and we've had such good feedback from guests. So it's things like that. We need more of these ideas. So that's one of the reasons, you know, we're really keen to collaborate, to speak to other people, because there is so much to do on waste. I mean, one example for us is we led the industry in making the move from the little small plastic bottles for shampoo and conditioner and shower gel to the larger bottles. So, I mean, that was a bit of a marker in the sand for the industry, saying, look, the level of waste we have is unacceptable. How can we do more? How can we do our bit? But still, you know, we're moving to these big bulk bottles, but actually then how can we work with suppliers to ensure that those are taken back, those are recycled? And if you think about the scale that we have, we do have the power to make a difference. So it's not just about collaboration outside the industry. We also work with our peers through the International Tourism Partnership, thinking about how can we work together to come up with some of these solutions. So I think we're kind of at the start of our journey, but absolutely, you know, excited about working with partners to find more innovative ways to reduce waste.
Well, it's certainly going to be exciting to see how the seeds of these various initiatives continue to grow. I want to close with a final question that kind of brings it into this specific moment in time, which is in the midst of a global pandemic, in the midst of a recession. You know,
Yeah.
how is the idea of circularity changing in this time, and how do you imagine it may be different coming out on the other side?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that we talk about a lot internally, because, you know, our industry has been hit, you know, very, very hard by COVID, as have many. And, you know, the priority for us right now is making our hotels a safe environment for guests to stay in. So in some cases, that means from a waste perspective, for example, or circularity, we've been able to take some big steps ahead. So, you know, going to paperless billing, reducing items of waste. But in other areas where you've got PP&E in the hotels, you know, for example, you're going to have more waste. So I think there's a fantastic opportunity here to pivot to more sustainable, medium, long-term solutions. So I think that whilst I think COVID's interesting in that it's, in some ways, it's moved the environmental agenda forwards, but in some cases it's kind of put some things back a little bit. So I think it's a really interesting point in time. Everybody's agreed we need to take bigger steps, but we need to be able to combine it with that sort of very strong focus on health and safety as well.
Very, very well said. And I think much of that is true across many different sectors and industries right now. But Catherine, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your insight into what you and IHG are doing. Catherine Dolton is the Vice President of Global Corporate Responsibility at the InterContinental Hotels Group. Thank you so much, Catherine.